You're probably here because you have stalled out in your progress on the rowing machine and you're wondering, why am I not getting any better? You start to, maybe you decide you don't want to do it anymore. You decide, I gotta give this thing a break. Let's talk about why you may not be improving and what you can do to fix that. Welcome guys, I'm Shane Farmer and this is Dark Horse Rowing, where you build the life that you want to live and we just happen to use rowing to get you there. So there are a number of different buckets or funnels you may fall into as reasons why you've stalled out in your progression on the machine. Bucket number one is the consistency bucket. Now, what do I mean by consistency? Well, you're just not getting enough practice reps on the machine to improve. I've always said 2 days a week is the minimum threshold for how many times you need to be on this machine to, at a minimum, get better. You can absolutely row 7 days a week if you want to. I'd advise having some rest days in there. So 5 is probably a really good number with, 2 on, 1 off, 3 on, 1 off. That gives you 5 days a week of training, 2 off. But if you're only getting on the machine 1 day a week, or perhaps intermittently, maybe every other week you get onto your machine, well, you're probably not gonna progress because you end up restarting the cycle every time you get on the machine, and that's just going to hold you back. Your body doesn't have the ability to adapt with the consistency, meaning you don't take enough practice swings to actually improve the stroke for a number of different factors, but they all come back to consistency. That would be your mechanics, that could be your aerobic capacity. All of that comes down to showing up enough to get better. Bucket number 2 is mechanics. If you aren't progressing and you haven't stepped back and said, maybe I should analyze my technique or the way that I move on this machine, you're naturally setting yourself back because good mechanics optimize the stroke. And put in plain terms, it's because by focusing on the right way to move on this machine, what you learn to do is tweak all of the inputs to the monitor, and the monitor is what we're chasing down at the end of the day. Can I make the monitor say that I'm going faster? It's understandable as well because this is a learned movement. Rowing is not a natural pattern. Nobody sits down on this machine and does it right the first time. You have to understand or see somebody, or you have to piece together the right way to move. Legs, body, arms, body, legs. Obviously it goes far deeper than that. But the point is, without focusing on it, then you end up spinning your wheels. And there are a lot of small tweaks and areas for improvement that you may not even know that you could make that will give you increased performance. And one of my favorite examples of this is the speed of your turnaround at the catch. As you're sliding forward on the recovery, getting ready to push through the next stroke, the rate at which you change direction, not the rate that you move forward, not the rate that you move back, but simply the amount of time it takes you to change directions, that moment, the hook, as you go from sliding forward to going back. If there is any delay there, if you stop or if you slow down or if you don't connect to the tension on the handle, there's a massive drop in power. And that's because you don't connect with the machine, and therefore the handle moves and you don't have any tension, and then all of a sudden you pick up tension after the handle's moved a few inches. Well, that's free speed that you're leaving on the table. That's progression. That's improvement that's not happening because you don't know what you don't know, and nobody can blame you for that. So all you have to do is step back and say, all right, maybe it's time that I break down my technique. Maybe I take a couple weeks to focus on my mechanics, because by doing that, you can break through that ceiling or that plateau that you've been stuck at and find your way to new and improved performance. And bucket number 3 on this assessment is a program or some kind of progression that you are shooting for. How are you ever supposed to improve if you never have any kind of benchmark to test against? So many people jump on this machine and they might do hit workout after hit workout after hit workout. Don't just choose hit workouts. Pick workouts that give you some kind of logical endpoint. And so what I would argue for is you should choose a benchmark that you want to approach, because if you do a 500, let's say, you do a 500 and 8 weeks later you test your 500 again, if you've improved or gotten worse is your measure of how you are progressing. So if you choose a 500 meter, well then for 8 weeks or 6 weeks or 12 weeks, whatever your time window is, all of your workouts should be oriented towards improving a 500 meter test. And guess what? If you do it 2 or more times a week, week, if you focus on your mechanics in that time and you have a progression to follow, you are going to improve your 500 meter. That is breaking through the plateau. So you have to strategically look at, why am I on my machine? What am I doing every time I sit down for a workout? And you have to think about that beforehand. Don't just get onto your machine and then start scrolling through YouTube looking for a workout. Plan what you're going to do. Number one, you're going to set your consistency, because you're going to say, okay, well, I see that I have 3 workouts to do this week. Therefore, I need to schedule that in 3 times, and then you get in 3 workouts. That's going to improve the consistency part. And then the progression part means that every workout you do is oriented towards a North Star, and that North Star is going to make sure that all of the work that you do orients in one direction to help you improve towards that thing. And those 3 buckets are so critical. And you don't have to choose them all at once. You can choose a progression, you can choose to be more consistent, or you can choose technique. If you tap into any one of those funnels, it's going to help you improve and break through whatever stagnation you may have in your training, which is going to lead to all the things that I always say: happier, more enjoyable workouts. You're going to see the value in everything that you do, and it's just going to improve your experience, which is going to make you want to come back and be more consistent, focus on your technique, and then follow a progression of some kind. And you might be asking, well, how do I find a progression? There are a number of ways. Number one, obviously we have the Crew, which is our program where you get a community to help support you. You have technique into many of the workouts where we're teaching you the workout. You can even submit video for your technique so that we can help you improve it. Our coaches will watch it and tell you what you need to do differently. And you can pick from our entire library of training programs. And so if you want to do a 500 or a marathon, there's a training program for you to follow. Now that's just with me. Now, for example, if you were to use the Hydro or the Ergata machine, well, all of those are going to come with training programs baked into their system as well. And by baking that into the system, well, now you can say, all right, I'm going to follow this program as I go forward. Now, barring that you don't want to pay for a program, something like ours is $19 a month. If you don't want to pay that, totally understandable. So what you can do for yourself then is you pick the distance that you want to get better at, or maybe it's a time, maybe you want to improve an hour, right? A power hour. So you'd have to do a test. Always start with a test. Then what you want to do is write out your desired training program. Choose the number of weeks. I'd advise somewhere from 6 to 12. That's a good range, right? So a month and a half to 3 months. That's kind of your window for improvement. Then choose the number of days of weeks. Then choose the number of days a week that you want to train. And I always advise, start with less and you can add more later. But if you start with more, it really skyrockets your chance for burnout. And so I'd say, if you want to start with 2 days a week, but your goal is 4, great, start with 2 days a week, do that for several weeks. And then when that is totally normal, totally doable, you feel good about it, then add in a 3rd day, same for a 4th day. Okay, that helps you build up and get more comfortable with that concentration of training. So you choose the number of days a week, and then for each of those days, look somewhere in that hour window and say, how could I write workouts that encapsulate something or some part of that hour workout? So maybe that means you do 2 by 30 minutes with a 5-minute rest in between. That gives you 60 total minutes on the machine for a training session. Maybe you then want to say, all right, well, why don't I go for 75 minutes? Because that puts you over 60 minutes. So that would get you comfortable with 60 minutes easily, because then the extra 15 minutes, when you go to retest 60 minutes, 60 feels better compared to 75. And you know what 75 feels like. Then maybe you need to throw in some power workouts to improve your strength on the machine. So maybe you do 15 by 500 meters. Now, is that gonna fall at less than an hour? Sure, maybe your total training time is gonna come in close to an hour, but what you're working on is being able to be more explosive and add strength and speed to 500 meter windows, and that's going to improve your underlying base strength inside of that hour. And so then what you do is you just look at that window, you say, okay, well, I'm gonna do 6 weeks. I have 3 workouts a week that I'm going to do. That gives me 18 total workouts. So I have to write 18 workouts, and to do that, I need to look at my desired benchmark, and then I break down my workouts from there. And that's how you basically write a progression. Very simplified, but that's what I go through when I'm writing a program for the Crew. And that's how you could do it too, is to walk through that to make sure that you have a progression to follow and that you can get the most out of this machine, breaking through those plateaus, because nobody wants that. We don't want to be stagnant on this thing. We want to thrive. We want to be happy, and we want to see our progress so that we know that we're getting better no matter what our stage in life, and that we are becoming better people or getting towards the things that we want to get towards because we're putting in the work. Hey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell next to it. Make sure you get alerted whenever we come out with new videos as well. If you're looking to kind of kick off that training and you're wondering where to start, well, the beginner playlist we have for workouts is a great place to start. I'd encourage you check that out because it means you're gonna be able to move with me. I'm gonna start to teach you. You can move and groove there, and if you feel good about it later, well, then you can come join us in the crew, which is always linked in the description below.